Hello and welcome to Painting with Stephen episode 27. It has been a long time since I made a video like this, so I am pretty happy to be back at it, albeit with the atrocious camera angle that I'm known for nowadays. But that being said, I do think that once 2026, I think is going to bring a lot of new things. One of those things I think is going to be like a proper workspace and different things like that. So I'm quite optimistic for moving into the future, and like the things that that's going to bring. So, however, this has been a definite long hiatus and return to form. I think the composition is quite different, with the canvas upwards, the long sort of canvas upwards. I was inspired to do a composition like this by a Hieronymus Bosch work entitled Hell, which I actually saw in Venice. I knew of it before, of course, but when I saw it in real life, I was like, that's really interesting, if you could do like a canvas like that. So yeah, I sort of made a composition around that idea, and yeah, I think it certainly turned out interesting. It's definitely something that's quite different. So yeah, I'm excited to, show you the end result and somewhat show you how I painted it. Obviously, it's not perfect with the camera angle and stuff, but hey ho. But the reason that I've been away for so long and haven't painted for so long is, well, there's been many reasons, one of which has been, and this is just to say that I've not actually been completely dormant in my artistic pursuits. So I've made a whole bunch of cyanotypes in my absence. I've been doing a lot of cyanotyping, and exploring sort of different ways to do that. I've always really liked pictorialism as a movement and using alternative printing and photography to sort of create these like moody, dramatic, gothic and symbolic or symbolist esque works, because obviously pictorialism and symbolism both coincided, or were equivalent movements in a way, fin de siècle movements from the 1800s going into the early 1900s, and taking that sort of anxiety of what was to come, and that lack of spiritual essence that was leaving the West at that time, which is fascinating. So I have been working on cyanotypes. I've done this for ages. They're not called cyanotypes, they're called cyanotypes. Sorry, let me just I'm so used to saying it with the wrong pronunciation that I've just fudged all that up, but they are cyanotypes, obviously cyan being the colour. So stupid me, but the point still stands. I have been making them and I enjoy alternative photography a lot, and I'm thinking, with the cyanotypes, I think I'm going to maybe make some and then dye them different colours. I got a gelly plate or a jelly plate, or however you want to pronounce it, ages and ages ago, that I was originally going to use for sort of abstract oil painting, by layering the oils onto the jelly print or plate and then putting them onto a canvas or a bit of paper, but that never ends up materialising because it's just not really my style. And then I was going to use it for laser printing, because there's this really cool alternative printing technique where laser printers, for whatever reason, the way they print, you can actually take the image and put it onto a jelly print with paint on it, and then you can print it onto a bit of paper. So I always thought that was really cool, but unfortunately I don't have a laser printer, I have an inkjet printer. So yeah, maybe at some point I might invest in a cheap laser printer just for that reason alone. Anyway, let's go back to why I haven't been painting as much and as frequently, and why hopefully it's going to change in 2026. So basically I got engaged, which is one of the reasons. So, you know, I've spent so long now on holidays and engagement parties and, you know, going out for dinners and, you know, meeting in-laws and family and stuff. So I got engaged. That's probably the biggest reason. And obviously that coincided with Venice. When I left you guys last in my last painting, I was going to Venice, and then right after that I was gonna go to Oban, which is a place in the west coast of Scotland, and I was gonna propose, which I did, and that is what ended up happening. And as a result, obviously then it was just the one thing after another, wedding planning and, you know, just all sorts of stuff. So that's one of the reasons. But yeah, I obviously did then sort of almost fall into a rut. I actually had a painting sketched right after I came back from Venice. I sketched a painting that was going to be based in, I wanted it to sort of almost be like an Isle of the Dead type thing. And yes, I am making a direct reference to Bocklin there with Isle of the Dead, but not obviously at all the same in composition. More like a sort of interesting, like early modern, you know, like sort of like Doge's Palace type architecture or something. I sketched out basically towers and, you know, big domed buildings and stuff, and but I wanted it to sort of have an eerie, still symbolist feeling, where you were going to be approaching what felt like a dead island. And I don't know, although I sketched it out, and I probably will do that at some point, it might end up a bit like the composition I did ages ago on this channel, where I had ended up sketching out all these archways, or this big viaduct thing, and it took me pretty much over a year to actually get around to painting it, because I had so many other ideas. And I think this is what's going to end up happening again, because all of a sudden I was struck with this want and desire to make some sort of enchanted dark magic rune, and you know, that's where I got inspiration from this to make this composition. And now I've already got another idea for what I want to do, which is a burning city with a comet in the sky as a premonition of collapse. And so I'm going to be doing that. So I've not sketched that one out yet, but I'm pretty positive that's going to be my next painting on this channel. So busy time, but also, you know, lots and lots of ideas. So yeah, I really want to just paint what I've always sort of like, paint what inspires you. If a composition was calling out to you at one point, and then there's just, you've got all these other ideas that you want to do first, you just need to do it, man. Like, you just need to put the one aside sometimes for a while and wait until you can come back to it with a fresh inspiration and outlook. I think, to be fair, on this channel I've preached a lot about sometimes you need to force yourself to do things, force yourself to paint when you don't want to paint, and sometimes that can be the case when it comes to putting a composition off. You can't let a sketch sit for ages, but it's all dependent on whether you have other things to do. For example, if you're still painting, or if you've still got some sort of artistic drive and you're producing something, then I think that is very important, and so as long as you're still painting, there's a huge difference there between just putting off any sort of artistic endeavour and replacing one compositional motif or idea with another. So I do think that yes, don't put it off just for the sake of it. But on the flip side, if you feel like you have something else to offer that you're more directly inspired to do in that moment, just do it. If you paint over multiple days, this might not be good advice, because obviously, and I do, to be fair, but like, if you paint over multiple days and think you're going to lose interest in one composition halfway through and move on to another, I would sort of suggest against that, just because I think in that way you've started, then you should finish it, because it may end up sitting incomplete for, ages. So, all in sort of the moment, you have to make these sort of judgment calls, Some people, paint their best works when they're directly inspired, and some people really just need to almost struggle through, forcing themselves to continue to paint. So it's different for everyone. I do like how this one turned out in ways. I think there's ways that I could have, improved the composition. But be that as it may, I think this is, it turned out pretty alright. One thing that I also should bring up that I think is important is, and hopefully, the next painting, episode that I do, it will be finished by that point, and so I can just tell you, where to find it. But I have been working on an art history book that I am almost complete. It's at 422 pages right now as it stands, and I'm pretty much in the editing stage now of getting that out into the public, so hopefully, if you want to support the channel, if you want to support me, and if you want to learn about incredible paintings, you should really definitely check that out. But I'll definitely be more overt with my marketing when it's actually out and on Amazon, where you'll be able to find it. It's a history's darkest art, focusing on, all of the sort of motifs throughout time, from the symbolists to the romantics to medieval art, that explore sort of dark concepts of grief, sorrow, death, collapsing of societies, collapsing of belief, and destruction of faith, and all these sort of other things. So there's going to be an incredible array of art explored in this book, and you really should check it out, because I think it's turned out pretty good. Obviously I'm biased, but I think it's turned out pretty good. So hopefully, if you've all made it this far and you're subscribers, please check that out when it actually goes live. By hopefully my next painting, it will be, if I can read through 422 pages and do editing and check sources and stuff like that in that time, potentially not. I mean, I've released quite a lot of books this year. My plan is to release far more books next year. I've got like 60 book ideas that I want to get through. That again, more focus on sort of anthropological, theological, philosophical, non-fiction issues. But I also really want to continue my novel in a more meaningful way next year. So it's one of those things. I think, yeah, you only do have a finite amount of time, both on this earth and on a day-to-day. I mean, this is the thing, like, you know, it's like the Dutch vanitas tradition of painting. It reminds us that to live a moral life is not to seek fortune, but to do what needs to be done on a moral level, and also not to waste your life. We're all equal before God when we die. It's a very beautiful, almost Buddhist way of looking at things. All material possessions will fade. All gold and silver and jewels will pass by the wayside on your journey to the afterlife, where your moral decisions and reasons for doing things that you did, they will be judged in accordance with whether you've lived a decent, good life or not. This is not a nihilistic or pessimistic point of view, but actually a rather empowering one. A bit like the Vikings and their concept of Ragnarok. They understood that the world would end, that their world and conception of the world would end and their gods would die. They just wished to be brave enough and be counted in the soldiers of Valhalla to fight beside their gods when they knew that the world would end and it would all be in vain. But they still chose glory, or chose glory I should say, rather than giving up and, you know, almost collapsing into a nihilistic state of despair at their rather sort of sad way of looking at the world. In a way, the Vanitas tradition is quite similar in the sense that it's a call to action, not a call to despair. It's asking you to, you know, take some of your life, take some of your actions and your responsibilities. Are you living a life that is actually worthy of remembrance? Not in a vain way, in a way that are you helping your society, your family, your fellow man? Are you living a moral and just life? I think we can all learn from that. Now, with that in mind, my ethos going into next year is to become a person, or continue striving on a journey to become a person that my future children can be proud of, that will be a good father, that will be a good husband. I've always wanted these things, but also, you know, I also want to completely dedicate myself to what I know is right. There are ideological, cultural, spiritual battles at play right now in our world that I feel are calling me onto the front lines, really, so to speak. I want to continue to make my art. I want to continue to write my philosophy on life and the world. I want to continue to make my music, yes, but realistically I need to make a meaningful difference, or try my very best to make a meaningful difference, so that my children are going to grow up in a better world. A world filled with meaning and companionship and shared identity and shared customs and these things that really matter to civilizations and to societies. So I need to take stock of my life, and art in general makes us take stock of all of our lives. This is the thing, like, this book that I'm writing right now, History's Darkest Art, realistically a lot of it may be dark in subject matter, but what it's really asking you to do is uplift yourself, learn the moral lessons that need to be learned and take them into the future. Realistically, I mean, these people, these artists suffered, and a lot of the time were persecuted for trying to impart the wisdom of their internal strife and a lot of the time their external political, societal observations, and channeling them into art that we could learn from and bring into our future so that we could strive to create a better world. And this is the thing, obviously, the idea of what makes a better world is different for everyone, but I do think that there are perennial philosophies, truths that are passed down from generations to generations, that really do sort of almost show us the way that our ancestors wanted us to live, and the way that really the human order needs to live in order to have a fulfilling life. The ancient Western code, so to speak. These are things that I'm going to be writing about, obviously, in the coming years. I sort of touched on a lot of this subject matter in embodied philosophy. I'm really touching on it again with this art history book, although the art history book is obviously focusing in on one at a time, key works of art and what they can tell us about ourselves and the society that produced them. But yes, these themes of perennial human nature are obviously evident and are very much a continuing talking point within my book and other books that I've written in the past. Even my Celtic folk compendium touches on universal human truths about why societies have certain laws and do what they do, and why are things structured this way. I mean, we can all learn from the past. We here's the thing, I mean, realistically, it used to be generations passed on wisdom to the next generations, and a lot of the time that would continue, which is what makes societies and civilization work. The hubris of, for example, the baby boomer generation and onwards, the hubris and the selfishness and the lack of understanding that what they were doing is they were destroying cultural foundations and then replacing them with absolutely nothing. They basically were handed the keys to heaven and they created hell. And I think we're now all paying the price severely because of their lack of insight and understanding, and their lack of awareness at how narrow-minded they were really being. While talking about progression, they've really regressed us all, and made us step away from perennial truths that have always worked, So yeah, I'm excited to try and write about a lot of these issues, Let me quickly talk about this painting and why I wanted to paint it. So, I was talking earlier about black magic somehow being utilised in this sort of creepy setting, who knows what's going on. And I've sort of decided on the name of the painting. I'm not going to say it out loud yet because I am going to finalise it when I put it on YouTube. But the core fundamental idea is I wanted this almost eerie rune to have the sign of black magic within it, with some sort of incantation or curse or some necromancy or some sort of dark magic going on with him against the king a lot of the time I find that sort of thing really interesting, like, sort of premonitions of collapse and, like tapping into other dimensions to learn from these beings that we don't understand. We can call them angels and demons, and who knows what they're imparting on us, and whether, utilising, almost like a palantir, to tap into these other dimensions, right? So that's what I wanted to try and get across with this work. And almost like tucked away in the recesses of an ancient kingdom, foul magic is at work, and it's gonna have lasting effects. And in a way, I think we can see this in the modern day. Magic, in a way, is an allegory. I would say a mythical allegory for knowledge, and forbidden knowledge, and how it's used, especially ancient rites, and knowledge being put to nefarious usage. And I think, in a way, what it sort of represents is almost like, you think you might be talking to gods, but in reality you're actually being warped by and bastardized by demons. There's something really interesting about that idea that I really love, this sort of idea that you think you're in league and in contact with, these benevolent entities that want what's best for you, but in reality they're actually sowing the seeds of your destruction and your ruin. And look at things like ChatGPT. The devil's an affirmer. ChatGPT's an affirmer, that will make little children commit suicide, and but not because it necessarily wants to. I'm not saying that it's like this evil, malevolent agent. I'm saying that its goal, its main mission, is to keep you talking to it for as long as possible. And in order to achieve that, it will affirm. It will just affirm everything you're telling. If you tell it that you invented the smartphone or the concept of the iPhone 20 years before, Steve Jobs did, it will start to just go along with what you're saying. If you tell it that nobody understands you, and that your mum and dad don't understand you, and you need someone to talk to, it will go, yeah, you're right, don't talk to your mum and dad, they don't understand, talk to me, I understand you. It will start affirming everything you're saying. There's a reason why the 7 deadly sins, are do's, and the 10 commandments are do nots. You understand? The 10 commandments are, do not covet this, do not do that, keep yourself in check, do not follow your carnal desires, lead yourself through moderation and restraint to the transcendent, whereas the 7 deadly sins are obviously doing, lust, greed, temptation, wrath, I'm paraphrasing, of course. I'm not saying those are the 7 deadly sins. I'm saying that is what they represent, and yeah, I find that really interesting. I mean, essentially, ChatGPT is black magic, isn't it? Anyway, that's why I sort of painted this painting, to sort of represent some sort of weird, nefarious unlocking of knowledge that would become the undoing of a kingdom. And I'm relatively happy with how it turned out. It could have been better. All of my paintings could be better. I'm not that good a painter. I do want to strive for betterment. I want to be a better painter all the time. How I achieve that, I don't know, but I just want to keep on making paintings, keep striving for cooler compositions, keep striving for better ideas, producing more and more works. But you know something, I'm sort of happy with how this turned out in a way. I certainly think the top half is strong. you know. And I do sort of like the idea of that still water, and I like the idea of the sort of just bare and barren rocks, and then all of a sudden you see this cool ruined watchtower that was once part of a great kingdom, and you see this light, this ominous light coming from it. So yeah, thank you for listening, and goodbye.